When you think of the richest people in the world, the first ones that come to mind are people like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. But the problem is that these rankings are based on publicly available information and do not include people who may be even richer than Jeff Bezos. Take Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, for example. At the age of 34, he bought a $500 million yacht and a $300 million French palace, as well as a $450 million painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Even some of the richest people in the world, such as Jeff Bezos, who has dominated the Forbes list for many years, have to work hard to make money in order to have the power of such extravagance. In this video, we want to look at 5 types of rich people and why Jeff Bezos is not the richest person in the world, why real billionaires hide behind the scenes and never want to be seen at the top of the Forbes list. 1. The richest people on paper. Let's start with the poorest rich people. I know this sentence is a bit confusing, but we have a group of rich people who are always on the Forbes list, but do not even have a few $1,000,000. And are known as the paper rich. They set up a company in Silicon Valley, and the company has shown that it will succeed in the future, and then investors, banks and financial institutions in general are happy to lend them the money they need to start making money. Almost every startup in Silicon Valley is like this. The company probably has a great product with hundreds of employees, but they cost more than they earn. In fact, several of the largest companies, such as Uber, Lyft, and even Amazon, were run this way a few years ago. Amazon announced its first profitable quarter exactly in 2018. So it is possible that many of these people who claim to be billionaires may not even be able to pay their rent. That's why they all try to become rich level 2 people. 2. Initial supply, the dream of every business. If one day your business suddenly becomes famous and your net worth on paper is, for example, $5 billion. There is a step-by-step guide that tells you how to turn $5 billion in paper into real cash. First, do your best to promote your product to enhance its value, then make it public. During the initial public offering, when many people are willing to invest in your company, sell a portion of your stock, but not too much, something like 5 to 10% of your fortune. Congratulations, now you have $250 million in real money and you have become one of the richest people. Now you can go and buy a big house for $20 million and a sports car that you have always dreamed of. But keep a few $1,000,000 in your account for emergencies and invest the rest in stable companies that are sure to be profitable. Under these circumstances, Forbes probably estimates the value of your assets at about $5 billion. But you know that figure is not real and you only have a few $100 million of real wealth. Ivan Spiegel, for example, had a net worth of $4.3 billion in 2020. He should be able to buy a $500 million yacht and a $300 million French mansion, especially since he has French citizenship. But he cannot, because this $4.3 billion for his shares of Snapchat is only on paper and in practice he cannot even get half of it. Snapchat is a huge company that has a lot of income. But the company has not yet made a profit. 2 years have passed since its initial public offering, with 218 million users, valued at about $31 billion, and Ivan's assets primarily come from the company's 18% stake. So even though he is a billionaire, he cannot buy a $500 million boat like Ben Salman. Of course, you might say to yourself, well, he can sell all his shares and make billions of dollars and become one of the richest people in the world. Yes, in theory, but in practice not really if he sells a large portion of his stock all at once. An oversupply of Snapchat shares in the market will lead to a fall in prices. In this way, the net worth of its assets will be much lower. More importantly, if the founder of Snapchat suddenly starts selling his shares, investors will lose confidence in the company. And they may decide to sell their shares, which could lead to the collapse of the entire company. Jeff Bezos, who is known as the richest person in the world, also falls into this category. 3. Where all the rich people in the world want to be. Suppose you had a successful initial public offering and made millions of dollars. Now how do you turn another $4.75 billion into real wealth? Here is your step-by-step guide. Keep your company growing, but at the same time, sell a small portion of your stock each year and invest in other profitable companies. In 10 or 15 years you will be able to diversify your portfolio and you will no longer be a moneyless billionaire. The best example of someone who has done this successfully is one of the richest people in the world named Bill Gates. He became famous with the founding of Microsoft, but today Microsoft owns only a small percentage of his stake. Its largest shareholder is Berkshire Hathaway, a large holding company that holds various companies under its wings. So if Microsoft shares fall sharply tomorrow, its wealth will not be affected in any way, because its wealth comes from many stable companies around the world and in various industries. Four. Real billionaires. What could be better than $5 billion made up of shares of different companies? That alone would cost about $500 million. You do not need to touch the original pulpin at all because the profit alone will provide you with a luxurious life. However, the next group of rich people is one step higher and they are the leaders of the countries. In many countries of the world, people come to power who, after consolidating their position of power, will continue to do so for the rest of their lives. And as long as they are in power, they have all the wealth of that country. For example, the former president of Libya, consider Gaddafi. He was one of the richest people in the world with a fortune of approximately $200 billion, or the president of Russia, who has been in power for 20 years and recently changed the country's constitution to stay in power for another 20 years. All nations must pay taxes, and with this money you can do whatever you want. The benefits of natural resources will also be under your control. You can have as many personal jets, yachts and anything you want as you want. But this type of wealth is not sustainable. The people of your country may get tired of you and protest against your dismissal. The Arab Spring is a perfect example of this. During that time, many heads of state who had been oppressing their people for 30 or 40 years were overthrown and replaced. 5. Members of the royal family. Final level of wealth. Qatar is an oil-rich country with probably the highest per capita GDP in the world and is run by Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. According to the constitution, the emir or leader of the country should only be elected from the Al Thani family, and he is the head of state and commander-in-chief of the Qatari armed forces and the guarantor of the constitution. So it does not matter what he does, how much money he spends and how many private palaces and jets he buys. He will not be fired and he can spend the wealth of the country in any way he wants. But most importantly, his son or one of his sons will be the next king of Qatar, and this is the ultimate level of wealth that you have in a country. And it's not just Qatar. Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Jordan are neighboring countries with similar power structures. In Britain, she is the Queen, President and Commander-in-Chief of the British Armed Forces, and is recognized by the British government as His Highness. He may not directly control the government, but taxpayers still have to pay for his luxurious living and the expenses of the whole family. and everyone born into this family automatically becomes rich. You can find similar examples in other European, African, Asian countries. Royal blood is a privilege, and for some reason if you are from a royal family, people will treat you like someone who has been favored by God. Because history is full of examples of royal dynasties, people respect royal families and consider them high-class citizens.